Okay, so can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So today we are going to study about basal ganglia. So it's one of the most important part along with
Hmm.
cerebellum that is involved in our motor activities. So first of all, what is a sensory activity? What is a motor activity?
Sense sensory activity means it picks up uh, yeah, the signal from the receptors.
Okay.
Motor activity is its effector activity.
Okay. That is a sensory activity means sensations are being carried from the body parts to brain, right?
Hmm.
And motor activity is the response for those sensations
Hmm.
that reach the brain. And I hope you know the tracks, right? The tracks that carry these sensations as well as the tracks that bring the responses. I hope you
Hmm.
know that, or else it's
Yeah.
okay, fine, no problem. We have got two types of tracks, that is ascending tracks and descending tracks.
Hmm.
Ascending tracks, they're also called sensory tracks, and descending tracks are also called motor tracks. So the difference between these two is that ascending tracks or the sensory tracks, they carry the sensations from various parts of the body to the brain,
Hmm.
and the brain give the response or generate the response, and those responses are being carried by these motor pathways or the descending pathways to the effector organs. That's the general pathway through which these sensations and responses are being carried out in our body. And most of the motor activities, or almost all the motor activities, involve the movement of muscles, like
Hmm.
so muscular movement is considered to be a motor activity, and whatever be the response will be in one way or the other in the form of a muscular activity. That's what's happening. Even if we have some sort of itching in our body, we feel this, we have this sensation, and what we do is we'll use the other hand. So when we use the other hand, a group of muscles are being used, so that is a motor activity. The muscles are contracting and relaxing so we can perform a particular function or activity. And the role of cerebellum as well as basal ganglia comes in this section, that is the control of movement in our body. Whatever be the movement, either it is voluntary or involuntary, it doesn't matter. Whatever be the movement, it is being controlled mostly by the basal ganglia and cerebellum in cooperation or in coordination with the cerebral cortex. And I hope you know the parts of the brain, right?
So basically, the basal ganglia help
Hmm.
to coordinate uh, motor and sensory signals.
Yes, that's true. No, I'm asking, you know, what are the areas in, I mean, the parts of brain? Just, it
Parts
is,
of brain called,
yeah,
yeah, for forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain,
hindbrain.
cortex.
Yes. So the forebrain consists of the cerebral cortex or the cerebral hemisphere, with those two cerebral hemispheres, and the diencephalon. And midbrain, it's just the midbrain. We don't have any other divisions. And the hindbrain, it consists of this one, pons, cerebellum, and medulla. Okay, these are the parts of brain. And basal ganglia comes in close association with the cerebral cortex, or it is seen in the cerebral cortex. And basal ganglia, it is a group of subcortical nuclei within the brain. It is a group of nuclei. Basal ganglia itself, it is otherwise known as basal nuclei also. So basal ganglia is a group of nuclei or a cluster of nuclei seen in the brain. It is a group of gray matter, or it is a gray matter seen in the white core of each cerebral hemispheres. So in each cerebral hemisphere, we can see this basal ganglia, and they are masses of gray matter. And I hope you know that in brain and spinal cord, the location of gray matter and white matter are different, right? I
Yeah.
hope you know that.
Gray
Okay.
matter is outside, white matter is inside. in the
Okay.
cortex.
Yes. And that is in brain. In brain, gray matter is outside and white matter is inside. Whereas in spinal cord, white matter is outside and gray matter is inside. So here, these basal ganglia, it is a large group of or large mass of gray matter that is seen inside the white matter of the cerebral hemisphere. And it forms the essential constituents of extrapyramidal tract or extrapyramidal system. This extrapyramidal as well as the pyramidal system, these or pyramidal tract, these two come under the descending pathways. Have you heard of these tracts?
Descending pathways, no, for
Mm.
motor
Mm.
signaling.
Yes, exactly. Motor signaling. So the descending pathways, it is of two, that is pyramidal tract and extrapyramidal tract. So this forms a part of, basal ganglia helps in coordinating the extrapyramidal system as well as the pyramidal system. So it is in close cooperation with these two systems or these two tracts. Then it is
Okay.
responsible primarily for motor control as well as other roles such as motor learning, executive functions, emotional behaviors, etc. Main thing or the main responsibility of basal ganglia along with cerebellum is control of the motor activities in our body. Whatever be the motor activities, these two are the main parts that help in controlling the motor functions. And apart from the motor activities, basal ganglia also helps in motor learning, then creating certain functions or executive functions, emotional behaviors, etc. And it also play an important role in reward and reinforcement, addictive behaviors, and habit formation. All these are a part of basal ganglia. That's why when any problem arises for basal ganglia, or that's why when any lesions means destruction or damage to basal ganglia occurs, many of our habits or many of our behaviors get completely changed. Have you seen any patient or any person suffering from Parkinson's disease?
Hmm.
Yes.
Parkinson disease? No.
No. Okay.
So
Anyway, you since
lack
you
of
are,
dopamine, right?
yes, lack of dopamine. And it is just, it is the most important, or it is one of the problems that arise due to damage in the basal ganglia, especially substantia nigra. So in that disorder, we can see several types of symptoms or several type of manifestations of the disease. And one thing is their habits and their behaviors completely change. It will be entirely different from the person who was previously or just before the problem arising. Okay. So anyway, the first and foremost thing you have to keep in your mind is that basal ganglia is very important for controlling our body functions, especially the motor activities. Okay. It's in close association with the cerebral cortex as well as the corticospinal tract. That corticospinal tract is the pyramidal tract. Okay. I hope you are able to follow me.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, what are the components or what all constitute basal ganglia? So it consists of corpus striatum.
Corpus.
Corpus striatum is divided into two as caudate nucleus and lenticular nucleus. Lenticular nucleus is again divided into two as putamen and
Putamen and
globus.
globus
Globus
pallidus.
pallidus, yes. Globus pallidus again has two parts actually. I have not mentioned here. That is internal globus pallidus and external globus pallidus. Okay. Then along with that comes substantia nigra and subthalamic nucleus. So these are the parts or these are the constituents of basal ganglia. Then almost all motor and sensory nerve fibers connecting the cerebral cortex and spinal cord pass between the masses of caudate nucleus and lenticular nucleus called internal capsule. This internal capsule, this term is very important, or you can see this term being used in the path, this one pyramidal tract pathway or pyramidal pathway. You know about the pyramidal tract and extrapyramidal tract? Have you studied?
Yeah, the motor before a motor run, a
Yeah.
corticospinal tract now.
Yes, exactly. There are two. Pyramidal is again divided into two as corticospinal and corticobulbar. Corticobulbar are those what motor pathways that end in the cranial nerves, or they end in the cranial nuclei, and from there it goes to the parts. That is, head and neck portion is being controlled by the corticobulbar, and the remaining parts of the body, especially from the towards the lower parts of the body, it is being controlled by the corticospinal tract. So these nerves that form the corticospinal tract, they pass through the internal capsule. Okay, so that's the thing we have to know about the initial part. So this is the structure of basal ganglia. We see when we just take a CT or something. It's just the outer part. So this entire mass forms the basal ganglia, and this green part, it is the corpus striatum with the
Hmm.
caudate nucleus. Then comes substantia nigra, which is seen very lowerly. Then here you
Subthalamic nucleus.
subthalamic nucleus. Then comes globus pallidus. It's behind this one actually, and it is divided into two as globus pallidus internus and globus pallidus externus. Okay,
The
this is
corpus striatum.
corpus striatum. This green part is the corpus striatum, which is again divided. This entire part is also called the caudate nucleus. And then comes globus pallidus is this one, and when putamen can also be seen just behind this one. And this is how we see when uh, we get a cross section. So in cross section, this is what it seems to be. These two forms the lateral ventricles. Hmm? And
Hmm.
then comes the third ventricle, and this is the fourth ventricle. And lateral on either sides of the lateral ventricle, we can see the caudate nucleus. Then comes globus pallidus with the two external and internal. Then below that comes the substantia nigra and subthalamic nucleus, and this large one is putamen. So this is how we see basal ganglia in cross section. Okay, the previous one was just a outer this part only, and this is how we see it in a cross section. Is it clear?
Hmm.
Okay. Have any doubts so far?
No.
Okay, fine.
Just wait. Hypothalamus is here, and then substantia nigra. Subthalamic nucleus is above that.
Yes.
Globus.
Globus
Lenticular
pallidus and
nuclei is
thalamus.
putamen and globus pallidus,
Yes, lenticular nucleus, putamen and globus pallidus.
and caudate is here.
Yes. That wait a second, I'll just show the previous one. This one, no? When we do the cross section, we can see it on either sides. That's how
Hmm.
we see that the striatum is the lenticular nucleus and caudate nucleus. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's how we
Internal capsule is between the
internal
this one
capsule is with
putamen
putamen and this one, what? Caudate
caudate.
nucleus. Yes, putamen and caudate nucleus. Okay, clear?
Hmm.
This one here, it passes through this way. I mean, wait a second.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can see.
when the motor pathways, especially the pyramidal tract arise, no, it will be starting somewhere from here, like the primary motor area of cerebral cortex. The nerves or neurons, they are called corona radiata. Okay, these nerves, they are called corona radiata. They will form a group, and finally they'll pass through this part, internal capsule, and this is how they pass to the spinal cord. Okay, so this part is called the internal capsule between caudate nucleus and globus pallidus. Clear?
Hmm.
Okay. Now, about the circuit or about the neuronal connections inside the basal ganglia or between the parts of basal ganglia. It forms a basic feedback circuit receiving information from several sources, including cerebral cortex. So the main input comes from cerebral cortex, and most of the output also goes back to the cerebral cortex. Okay. In brain, we know, or especially in cerebral cortex, we know that there are 47 areas called Brodmann's areas, each of which controls and coordinates with the other areas to perform a particular function or perform a particular activity. You know that, right? Yes or no? Yeah. There are 47 areas, and in that there is somatosensory area, then primary motor area. Even we call them as motor cortex also. So somatosensory or the sensory area or primary sensory area. Then there is the primary motor area. Then we can see the premotor area, supplementary motor area, etc. There are so many such areas. Then in the temporal lobe, in frontal lobe, and everywhere, we can see many areas. So basically, the basal ganglia receives information from the motor cortex, either from the primary motor area or from premotor or supplementary motor areas. They'll receive the information from there, and it goes to the basal ganglia, various parts of basal ganglia, according to the type of movement or according to the type of motor activity it is going to get involved. Okay, it is based on the type of motor activity, and they receive information from the cerebral cortex. It goes to various parts of the basal ganglia, and either it incorporates or it sends its information to the pyramidal system, that is to the corticospinal tract, or it will go back as a circuit, internal circuit, back to the cerebral cortex itself. It depends on the type of movement or depends on the type of motor activity. Now, basal ganglia feeds this information back to the cortex via thalamus. So that is why it is called a feedback circuit. It is within the cortex and the basal ganglia, and along with that comes the thalamus. Then it acts to modulate and refine cortical activity, such as that controlling descending motor pathways. So it helps in modulation, that is the intensity as well as the timely action of various or timely performance of various activities, and to make it refined and to make it precise. Hmm? So basal ganglia helps in doing all these activities or all these motor activities. Okay, by modulating it according to the need, then precising it, and also making it very smooth and convenient. Okay, so that's how it controls and coordinates various motor activities in our body. Okay, then to say about the connections, this is how it goes. That is starting from the sensory, motor, and association cortex. Okay, this pathway, this right side pathway, it is the pyramidal tract. Okay, this shows the pyramidal tract, that is from the motor and association cortex, the informations through the upper motor neurons, it reaches the brainstem, that is especially the medulla. Then from there, it passes to the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord through lower motor neurons, it reaches the skeletal muscles. So this part, this right side represents the pyramidal tract or the main motor pathway in our body. And the left side shows their connection with basal ganglia. Likewise, when we need a particular activity, the information will be sent to basal ganglia. Sometimes the basal ganglia will think about it, like what we say. It will think about it. It will think of what type of movement we have to perform or what type of movement should be controlled, etc. It will think about it, and those information will be passed to thalamus, and from thalamus it goes back to cerebral cortex. This is one pathway, and the other one is that the basal ganglia, it will think about it once again, and it will give direct information to the brainstem, that is especially to the medulla, and from the medulla through various interneurons, those information will be passed to the lower motor neurons, and finally the skeletal muscles will act and the motor activity will be carried out. That's how it happens. And when this path, yeah, please.
The basal ganglia is connecting the, like it's sending signals to thalamus and to brainstem nuclei.
Yes. It is according to the type of information or according to the type of muscular activity that is going to get involved or that is going to be performed. Sometimes this information from the motor cortex, the basal ganglia will accept it. It will think about it, what should be done, or should the information be passed back to the motor cortex, etc. So what happens in this pathway? The information from the sensory, motor, or association cortex we send to basal ganglia. Basal ganglia will take the necessary actions, or it will generate necessary actions. It will pass to thalamus, and from the thalamus it will go back again to the motor cortex, and from the motor cortex through this pyramidal tract the information will be passed to the skeletal muscles. That's how it happens. This loop happens in that way. That is, if suppose there some sort of information or some sort of muscular activity is needed, in such cases, means extra activity or a precise activity is needed, that time the information will be passed to basal ganglia. Basal ganglia will generate a response. It will pass to thalamus, and from the thalamus it will go back to the motor cortex once again, and from the motor cortex through the upper motor neurons the information will be passed to the medulla, and from there to the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord through lower motor neurons the information will be passed to the skeletal muscles. This is what happens in one loop. Are you clear, or are you getting confused? Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay. At the same time, there are certain informations or certain activities that doesn't require this loop. In such cases, the information from the motor or association cortex, it will come to basal ganglia. But the basal ganglia, what it will do is it will directly pass the information to the neurons in the brainstem nuclei, or that is neurons in the medulla, pons, or cerebellum, and from there through the interneurons, it will reach the spinal cord and the lower motor neurons. Lower motor neurons will pass the information to skeletal muscles or the muscles, and finally the muscular activity will be carried out. This is the indirect pathway. This is the direct pathway. Okay. Anyway, whatever be the process or whatever be the muscular activity, it will definitely involve the role. It will definitely involve basal ganglia, whatever be the activity. That's the main role of basal ganglia. Is it clear? Okay. Now about the neuronal circuits. I just gave you a brief idea of the circuit. Now we'll go into detail about the neuronal circuits that's happening inside. I just told you about the direct and indirect pathways. Now we'll see which are the pathways or which are the circuits and what do they do. Okay. So the first one is called putamen circuit. Okay, putamen circuit that helps to execute learned patterns of movement. And learned patterns, I'll come into that. Just I'll give an introduction, that's all. So the first circuit is putamen circuit, and the other one is called caudate circuit for cognitive control of sequences of motor patterns. What do you mean by cognition?
Cognition is our ability to recognize things.
Okay. And anything else? Cognitive activity is something related
It's
to
like
our
it's about
uh,
comprehending, right?
comprehending.
It's
Yeah,
about comprehending and thinking.
exactly. That's what cognition means. Means the way we think about a process, or the way we respond to certain things taking place, like running away from something, or doing some spontaneous activities like that. Okay, which involves thinking and comprehension. Such control is called, or such things are called cognition, or that thing is called cognition. And caudate circuit involves this cognitive control on various movements. Okay, So the other one is something related to the learned patterns, which we do it regularly or which we are aware about. Whereas in caudate circuit, it is some sort of spontaneous activities that happens in our day to day, either in our day to day lives or just once in a blue moon. Okay.
Hmm.
So first about the putamen circuit. Now, putamen circuit, it involves the association with corticospinal tract, that is the pyramidal tract. Okay, I told you, no, previously in the last diagram. Wait a second, I'll show that one once again. Yeah, in this I told about a loop, right? This one,
Yeah.
sensory, then basal ganglia, thalamus, then back to sensory, and from there through the upper motor neurons and lower motor neurons. This loop, this is the putamen circuit. Okay, this loop happens in the putamen circuit, and the other part, this one, happens in the cognitive circuit. That's what we are going to discuss about. So the putamen circuit main role to function in association with corticospinal tract to control complex patterns of motor activities like writing of letters, control movement of eyes, passing a football, then many aspects of vocalization like what we speak and all such things, when like what singing or whistling, all these are some modified aspects of vocalization. So such activities are controlled, or that activities happen through the putamen circuit, and it is in association with the corticospinal tract or the pyramidal tract. Okay, so it involves the learned patterns, and I'll show you the putamen circuit in the next slide, like the circuit how it goes on. And any abnormality to this putamen circuit leads to certain disorders like ethitosis. Have you heard of this term, ethitosis?
Yeah, acidosis.
What do you mean by ethitosis then?
Forgot the meaning though.
Okay, no problem. Ethitosis
Is
is
it associated with chorea?
no, no, no. Chorea is different. It comes under putamen
It's a
abnormality
walking,
of
right?
putamen. Sorry.
The abnormality of walking, right?
Yes, flickering movements or
Gait.
flicking movements of hands, face, and other parts of the body. That is called chorea, flicking movements. And ethitosis is some twisting movements of our body, twisting movements of hand, arms, neck, etc. It is called ethitosis. Then next comes hemibalismus. Heard of that one?
Yeah, that's
And any idea what it is?
gait. That's a type of abnormal gait.
Sorry?
Abnormal gait.
Abnormal gait. We can't say that completely. It's what wild or swinging our arms wildly. It's somewhat out of control, and or the what either hand or legs complete swinging or waving of our limbs. That is called flaying movements, and that condition arises in hemibalismus. Okay,
Okay.
flaying movements. That is what comes in hemibalismus. It is swinging movements of our body parts, especially the hands or legs. That is hemibalismus.
Okay.
And the last one is chorea. Okay, that is flicking movements in our hands, face, etc. These three type of abnormalities that occurs due to certain parts destruction or damage or lesion to certain parts in this circuit. The first one, ethitosis, it comes as a result of lesions in globus pallidus, the globus pallidus part. Then when it comes to subthalamic nucleus, it gives rise to hemibalismus, and chorea is due to lesions in putamen. Okay, ethetosis occurs due to lesions in globus pallidus. Then subthalamic nucleus lesion leads to hemibalismus, and the lesion to putamen leads to chorea. Okay, it's just the result. I just mentioned it. That's all. I'm not going into much detail.
Lesion to athetosis, lesion or what is
Ethetosis,
athetosis?
ethetosis is the lesion to globus pallidus.
Globus pallidus.
Yes,
Hemibalismus is lesion of
subthalamic nucleus.
hmm. And
Subthalamic and
Korea's
chorea is
lesion of
putamen.
puta.
Okay. Now this is the putamen circuit. Here, I have just showed the circuit only. I have not given the complete part. Means the connection with the upper motor neurons and the pyramidal path. I'll just show you the main parts. So here, these three, the information for this putamen circuit arises from the premotor
Prefrontal,
and
premotor.
premotor and supplemental or supplementary motor area of the cerebral cortex, okay, or the motor cortex, and also from the somatosensory cortex. See, from the premotor, then from the supplementary, and from the somatosensory somatosensory areas of brain. So the input or the information arises from these three areas. Please note that the information doesn't come from the primary motor area. Instead, the informations come either from the premotor area or supplementary motor area or the somatosensory area. Supplementary is also known as association motor area. Okay, motor association area. Many terms are there for all these parts. So the information comes from the premotor area, the supplementary or the association motor area, and from the somatosensory cortex or the sensory area. From these three areas, the information will come to the putamen. It will not go to the caudate nucleus, but it will come to the putamen. That's why this circuit is called putamen circuit. Okay. Now the information comes to the putamen, and from putamen it goes to globus pallidus, internal as well as external. Okay, just I'll show you the first part. The internal, then comes the external, and from there the information will go directly to the thalamus. The information will go to the thalamus, and from the thalamus it will go back to the premotor area as well as the primary motor area. Okay, this is the circuit. Information or the input starts or arises from the premotor, then motor association or supplementary motor area, and the somatosensory area. So from here, from these three areas, the information goes into the putamen. From the putamen, it goes to globus pallidus, and from globus pallidus, it goes back to thalamus, and from the thalamus back to the cerebral cortex, especially the premotor and the primary motor area. Now, it is from the primary motor area the upper motor neurons of our descending pathway arise. Are you clear? Are you able to follow me?
Premotor, the descending pathways of upper motor neuron arise.
Yes, from the primary motor area and the premotor area, the descending pathway tracks arise. So the information will go like that. Okay, clear?
Okay.
Yeah. And along with that, we can also see one more track that is, or one more pathway that is being passed through this way. That is from the putamen, it goes to globus pallidus, and from the globus pallidus, especially from the internal part, the information will go to subthalamic nucleus, and from the external it will go to substantia nigra, and whatever it is, the information from here will go back again to the thalamus itself. It will not go anywhere else. This circuit, it will go back to the thalamus itself, and from the thalamus back to the cerebral cortex. So this is a closed circuit, or it is a loop, and through this loop the information will come back. That is, during this time when the information passes to the putamen, globus pallidus, etc., that information will be analyzed properly, and it will think about what should be done or how it should be done, how it should be carried out, etc. and whether it is a what pre-planned one, or whether we know about that, are those learned materials or skilled movements, etc. The information will be analyzed, and from there the information will again pass to the thalamus, and from the thalamus back to the cerebral cortex, especially the primary motor and the premotor areas, and from there through the descending pathway, the information will be given to the muscles, corresponding muscles. Okay, this is the putamen circuit. Is it clear?
Yeah, mainly it's just through putamen, globus pallidus, and ventral, the thalamic
Thalamus.
nuclei back to
Yeah.
cortex. Back to
Yes.
cortex.
Yes. Cortex, especially, you have to mention that it is to the premotor as well as the primary motor area.
Okay.
Okay. Then next is the caudate circuit, and this circuit involves cognitive control. Right, main role is cognitive control of motor activity, and most of our actions occur as a consequence of thoughts generated in mind. That is called cognitive control. And the example for this one, caudate circuit, that it is like, just now I had told you previously that when we see something or when we are scared of something in front of us and we feel